Alright, guys, I'm up here at BYU. I'm at my office and I'm working on my oil-based clay figure sculpture. Let's talk about some mistakes I saw with our anthropomorphic sculptures, so your sculptures that were part animal, part person. So I've got this wire armature here that's fastened to a wooden base. Doesn't have to be anything that's too pretty, but what I could tell by looking at some of your sculptures, your anthropomorphic sculptures, was that you didn't fasten the wire sculpture very well to the base, and you had issues where it was kind of leaning a little funny one way or the other. Some things you might need to think about. It should be fastened really firmly to the base with screws or nails, something. You can't just use glue. Glue's not going to do it. And if you're working and you have to actually hold it up in order to keep it from falling over, that means that the wire at the bottom is too thin. You might have to double up on the wire down there at the bottom. The wire down here is pretty thin, and actually if you look at the legs and ankles I've got here, human ankles are pretty thick. So you could actually have 2 to 3 times as much wire down here to hold it in place. So that might be helpful for you. First and foremost, when you start working on your figure sculpture, you need to think about the proportions. If the proportions aren't there, then it's really going to screw you up. If you have a pre-made armature, that's going to help you because someone's already done that work for you. But attached to the document that I sent you, I have the proportions of the human body. So you should refer to that frequently as you're working. A common mistake as people start working on a figure sculpture is that you want to add details in before you've got everything laid out in proportion. Don't worry about details until the end. So toes, fingers, fingernails, hair, texture, don't do any of that stuff. Another common mistake is that people start to add musculature in high definition, right? So I think about 5 of you guys sent me in sculptures that had really prominent abdominal muscles, really large shoulder muscles, big pectoral muscles, but the proportions weren't really correct and the bones didn't really look like they were in the right place. It's more important that the proportions look right and the bones look like they're in the right places than it is to have a 6-pack or an 8-pack or whatever. Really honestly, even with very fit, muscular people, you don't see the abdominal muscles unless they're flexing them or unless they've got about 4% body fat, which is actually really rare. So don't focus on that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's talk about what I've already done. You shouldn't resolve your legs to a very high level of detail until the whole thing is in place. And the reason why is because once you get everything in place, you're going to probably start seeing some mistakes. And you're going to make adjustments, and if you've done too much detail already, then you're going to hesitate with that. So just get everything built, and what I recommend is that you actually build a little bit thicker than you need to. So this guy's got some pretty beefy legs. I'm going to take that down a little bit. I don't need him to be a super muscle man, but I'm giving myself a little bit of extra clay because it's easier to get it to look right if you're taking away a little bit of clay instead of adding. Alright, so let's go ahead and start adding some clay on. I've got all this clay laid out beforehand. Sometimes if your clay is a little firmer, it can help to knead it a little bit. It tends to soften up as you do that. And I'm just going to add this clay on. One of the nice things about oil-based clay is that you don't have to treat it the same way that water-based clay gets treated. If we were working with water-based clay, we'd have to build it hollow. We'd have to be real careful about how we were sticking everything together. This is actually going to be kind of nice for you guys to not have to worry about all that. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and start adding on clay and building this up. And once I've got everything all filled out, then I'll come back and do another video where we talk about proportions. And in a little bit we're going to learn about the muscles in the body. So it's really important that we be aware of the bones and muscles of the body so that we know where everything should be. Alright, I'll see you in a little bit.